This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Being financially literate can be extremely important when navigating tough times and tough markets. Starting with the class of 2027, all Connecticut high school students will have to take a financial literacy course. And today's guests say that topics like saving for retirement, 401ks, and investing should all be included in the coursework. Today, we get an update from financial experts and educators from around our state and hear what you can do to stay financially resilient. Joining us now is Barbara Angelicola-Manzolli, business education teacher at Lewis S. Mills High School in Burlington. Barbara, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
And also with us is Christian Sherrill, who's the Director of Growth and Advocacy with Next Gen Personal Finance. Christian, thanks for being with us again as well.
Hi, great to see you again. Thanks for having me.
And for our listeners, let us know if you have any questions. Give us a call, 888-720-9677, or leave us a comment on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. So, Christian, I want to start off with you here. This has been a pretty big year for financial literacy education. So give us an update of what's going on here in Connecticut and around the country.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, in Connecticut, 2027 is coming pretty soon. That's the first graduating class that's going to have the course on their transcripts in Connecticut. And Barbara, who you introduced just a moment ago, was really instrumental in making that happen for the state of Connecticut. Really, really excited about all the progress that's happening there. And then another organization that Barbara's involved with, Connecticut Financial Scholars, is working on implementation, and they're partnering with some of the largest school districts in Connecticut, using in part curriculum from my organization, Next Gen Personal Finance. So early days, but implementation is off and running in many school districts around the state. And I know we'll hear from Barbara on what that looks like specifically in a Connecticut classroom. But nationally, it's also been another banner year. So 2024 was the year that California passed the graduation requirement, being the largest or most populous state in the country. And this year, Texas and Colorado followed, as well as Kentucky and Delaware. So, Texas, and obviously Texas, very large state, Colorado, relatively less so. And then, Kentucky and Delaware, both pretty small states. However, 4 new states added these graduation requirements for personal finance, where every high school student is going to take a personal finance course in those states. And by what date varies state by state, according to the policy. But all told, that's about 500,000 high school students every year in those 4 states who are going to be taking a personal finance course now when they weren't before. And I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this earlier where I cannot remember a single finance course or anything related being taught to me when I was in school. So lots of change since then. And also, Barbara, a lot has been changing since the last time we spoke about financial literacy. And currently we're seeing accelerating inflation rates. We got a slowing job market and also a lot of uncertainty in the world right now. So what has it been like, Barbara, teaching personal finance and financial literacy during this time?
We started in 2007 from a grant from Connecticut, and obviously lots has changed since then, right? My curriculum keeps growing and changing and being current. We started with 2023 as a graduation requirement at Lewis Mills, so we were ahead of the curve a little bit. I'm finding that students are worried. I think there are more conversations happening at home than there was. I'm 63. My parents didn't talk about it with us. We talked about our family business, but didn't talk about the personal finances. Here's what they're worried about. They're understanding the concept that as soon as they get that first big person job, you've got to start planning for retirement because you do not know what is going to happen. That's a big one. Number two is the concept that they have to pay themselves first. There has to be that savings account for emergencies and things that happen. And this summer, my husband and I were in Calgary, Canada for the Stampede. And while we were there, our house sitter called us one day to let us know our septic system backed up into our in-law apartment in our basement. And I've used that as an example this year because it was a almost $7,000 credit card bill for all of the people that had to come in. And that just brought it home for them. And I've had lots of students doing that. I have two worries. I worry about the online gambling. Christian and I have talked about this. Students are doing it. They're finding a way around it. I had a student a couple of years ago that said he did it with his dad. That made me nervous. Right. It makes me nervous to think that they've got this available at such a young age. So they're worried about inflation. They're worried about having a job. They're worried about how far their dollar can go. They're worried about, are they ever going to be able to own a home?
So the online gambling and that trend happening, that's something that we definitely want to come back to in more detail in a little bit. But especially, Barbara, your students are in high school, so a lot of people may think, oh, that's so young. But as we talked about earlier, time is flowing by very, very quickly. And so the next thing you know, you're getting your big person paycheck, or you're making your big person purchases. So when it comes to life decisions like buying a home, getting married, or as you mentioned, something goes wrong in your home and you have to do a replacement and having to budget these things in, are students interested in learning about all of this and how to financially prepare for them? Because it sounds like many young people are either delaying these milestones for reasons that, everyone has their own reasons, but it is very difficult and lots of challenges going on right now.
They're definitely concerned. One of my first PowerPoints, so we do two things at the beginning of the semester. They have to track their spending for 30 days. And then they have to write an essay based on questions about what they spent their money on, even if the money came from their parents. That is a huge eye-opener for them. They have no idea how much money they spend in a month. The second thing we do is a PowerPoint about stages in your life. You're a young person, you're in a committed relationship, you get married maybe, you have gremlins. Once those gremlins move out of the house, you're empty nesters. And those conversations are really important because it sets up pictures for them. I had a former student reach out to me this summer, and she came for dinner with her fiance because he could not understand why they needed to budget their money. So I think they're seeing it. The other thing that's changing in personal finance is we are doing more college classes in the high school. So we have a partnership with the state community colleges. So depending if they take one of my classes, they're going to get 3 college credits for this. So that's been a big push for students to try to also break out of their comfort zone and start taking those college classes. Different than AP because they just have to do the class, pass the final, and they've got 3 college credits in their pocket. That's huge. And I think if more schools get involved in that, it's going to broaden the base even more about what we're teaching them and what they're learning about their futures.
Well, and Christian, it's interesting to be in this time right now because I think we have so much more information exposure and education specifically to finances, but I also feel like spending trends and the way we spend money has also changed in some way because of the internet, as Barbara's nodding. But the thing with financial literacy here, as we just mentioned, it's always changing. The curriculum evolves to incorporate different trends and tools, and one of the biggest things I think you added to the financial curriculum is the buy now, pay later tools that we do see pop up every now and then when we're shopping online. So for our listeners who may not be familiar, can you tell us a bit about these tools and how are you talking about them with your students?
This one for me, Catherine?
Yes, Christian, go for it.
So buy now, pay later, simply put, is buying something now and paying for it later.
Right.
But if you've ever been shopping online and actually increasingly in person now at a brick and mortar store, and you get to the checkout and you have the different payment options, debit, PayPal, credit card, etc. Now there's usually one that is from a third party. Some of the most famous ones are Klarna and Affirm and Afterpay. And essentially what it does is, you pay for a quarter of it in the moment, and then the rest of it you pay in installments. Typically over 2-week increments. this has really exploded in popularity, especially with younger people, because it sort of artificially depresses the price that you are paying in the moment for whatever the thing is you're buying. And coincidentally, maybe not coincidentally, it also makes you spend more because it looks like you're spending less because it's splitting it into those 4 installments. And so there have been some changes recently in terms of kind of regulating these things. Now, your payments on buy now, pay later loans are going to be reported to credit agencies. And the FICO score 10, which is the new FICO score coming out, will include information about buy now, pay later. And that has some sort of positives and negatives. If you use a buy now, pay later loan and then you make payments on time and then boom, done, you've made the purchase and it's all good, then that could have a positive impact on your credit score. However, how most buy now, pay later users end up getting into a cycle of debt is they miss payments on these loans, especially younger people miss payments on these loans because within your budget, you might look at a budget monthly, for example. Like I'm sure, with Barbara's activity, with the students, they're doing 30 days tracking my spending. With buy now, pay later, depending on when you made the initial purchase, the installment payments can come on seemingly random days, over the next couple of months. You might be having an auto payment happening on the 17th of the month, for example.
Right.
If you're getting close to, the bottom of your bank account at that moment, then you can overdraw your account, all kinds of penalties, et cetera, and fees that in many cases that go along with that. And it starts to chew into your ability to budget, frankly, because of this unpredictable. Well, it's not unpredictable, but it's less predictable than, okay, I got to make a payment on the first of the month.
Right. And Barbara, from your perspective too, especially since we live in a culture that gravitates towards instant gratification, that's why the buy now, pay later tools are very, very tempting. So how do you discuss these pitfalls with your students? And do you find, you mentioned that they track their spending for 30 days. Do you see your students wanting to continue building that habit?
They're wanting to build a habit. We also use budgeting apps. So once they catch on to a good budgeting app that they like, it gives them the idea to keep doing it. The buy now, pay later. So there are certain things in my classroom that I call my never, ever, never, evers. And buy now, pay later is one of them. We discuss them. We discuss the pitfalls. We discuss the interest rates. We discuss what Christian brought up about that very random payment schedule. And we talk about not having so much the instant gratification, but learning to save for something. There's something to be said to be able to go out and buy something and not have a payment after that.
Right.
And if we can teach these young people that you don't need everything now, I refer back to the Willy Wonka movie or not, and they get it immediately when I bring that one up. And they are understanding why they need to wait, why they need to build that savings account, and why they need to really do research before they jump into these things, right? So we talk about it now, and a lot of my kids, all of my students are juniors and seniors. So 4 to 5 years from now, they're going to be hitting the real world for the first time on their own for some of them, or they're going in the military and next year it's in their face, or they're going into the trades. Things change. So one of the big things I push with them is you've got to do research from reliable sources. We talk about NerdWallet, we talk about other really, really Forbes reliable sources that they can go into at any point in their life and try to learn something about it. And a student came in last week. Her mom's a financial planner, and she uses NerdWallet with her customers.
Well, and Christian, because earlier we mentioned the online gambling, so that's another big financial vulnerability for younger
Mm.
people. Sports betting and gambling legalized in Connecticut in 2021 for ages 21 and older. So, what concerns you, or what concerns do you have about people with limited financial experiencing participating in gambling and sports betting?
Yeah, I mean, all the research on, kind of what happens when sports gambling becomes legal in a given state shows that it often replaces more forward thinking, meaning long term financial planning behaviors. So, investing for retirement, saving up for an emergency. Those are the behaviors that kind of fall first when these laws go into place. And I always find this very ironic, but there's 40 states where sports gambling is legalized, and only 30 states we require students to take a personal finance course now. So we got some work to do to catch up on the education front. What worries me a little is that young people are able to skirt the age restrictions on these apps fairly easily, and I know Barbara has had experience with this. She's not going to out any of her students or anything like that, but I know that you've seen this, and I hear this from teachers all the time. Yeah, the age restrictions don't actually really work. And then this is sort of a term that has kind of gone out of fashion, I guess, but like the gateway drug nature of, your first wager
Right.
on an NFL game or a college football game or whatever, leading into, sort of a pattern. And by it, like there is such a thing as gambling addiction, right? It is, it sort of lends itself to that kind of repeated addictive behavior. Plus, that behavior is also often incentivized by the companies, that are offering sports betting apps, with promos and, codes that you can use to get bonus bets, but they only pay out if you win on your first wager. So let's get you in the door and let's get you wagering on these games is the idea. Oh, and then add on all the celebrity endorsements and the celebrities in the ads and the young, the athletes in the ads. And these are people that we aspire to be like.
Right.
And so it's like, all right, we've got their stamp of approval on these things. So as a young person, I worry about the behavioral science, the behavioral economics of having access to these things.
Well, and actually building
Can I
on
jump in?
Yeah, yeah.
Can I piggyback with that gateway comment?
Sure.
So when my students turn 18, I always joke that I'm very glad they can't do what I was able to do at 18, although I wasn't a drinker. I could go into bars January of my senior year of high school because drinking was legal back then. So we kind of talk about what's legal versus what's not legal. And I would say the majority of them cannot wait to go out and buy lottery tickets. Another way that they're jumping into this arena, and especially when we've got those really big, right, those really big payouts and they see it. And when I do the math and show them the actual percentage that, here's the percentage of availability that you might win this, they're like, but I could win a smaller amount. And anything I win is then a positive against what I spent. Until it isn't, right? And then we have to go into that conversation about people buying these on a weekly basis. And if they tracked it for a whole year, are you coming out ahead? Probably not.
Well, and Barbara, with what you were just sharing here and just kind of building on what Christian talked about earlier in terms of behavior. So, Barbara, do you talk to your students about sometimes this is a behavioral issue and perhaps you can game responsibly, but have to have that conversations to sort of expose that sort of idea?
So
right?
I refer it to going to the casino. If you would like to have a night out with your friends and you can afford $100, $200, know that when you're walking through those casino doors, you have to look at that as money you're willing to walk out the door without, right? And you have to look at this as entertainment. The problem becomes when we have the conversations about How do you keep it that way? Christian hit on that, right? This gateway that's going to lead them to wanting to do more gambling, other gambling, different gambling. It's just a slippery slope. And I think it's more so a problem for today's generation. We've got the internet, we've got our cell phones, we've got everything banging into us head first, so that we know that this is going on, right? Christian said the celebrities, the NFL players, anybody. I have students that work for some of these places, and they always reach out to me and go, I know you're not overjoyed that I'm working here. And I'm like, it's not that I'm not overjoyed. I worry about how it's going to affect everybody else.
And we'll be continuing this conversation after a quick break. Our financial literacy educators will stay with us. Let us know if you have a question about financial literacy, what topics you would like to see covered in a financial literacy class. Let us know, 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. When's the best time to start planning for retirement? Can we still plan to retire at 65? Today, we're spending the hour talking about navigating your personal finances during challenging times. And here to talk about retirement is Ben Fuchs, Chief Investment Officer at Fuchs Financial. He's also the co-host of the new podcast, Fuchs Around and Call Them Out. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And just a quick note here that Fuchs Financial is also currently a sponsor of Connecticut Public. And still with us is Barbara Angelicola-Manzolli, who's a business teacher at the Lewis Mills High School in Burlington, and Christian Sherrill, who's a Director of Growth and Advocacy with Next Gen Personal Finance. And so, Ben, you were listening to the conversation earlier with Barbara and Christian. I think I saw lots of nodding. Anything that jumped out to you that you would like to share or react to?
Well, it's just the buy now, pay later concept. It seems like so often they're trying to get young people in a scenario where they have to constantly pay more and more bills, right? Student loans, credit cards, now buy now, pay later. And it makes it very difficult for them to have any control over their own situation. If they have to pay $300, $400, $500, $800, $900, $1,200 a month, it's very difficult to leave a job. It's very difficult to do something different. So I think the goal for a lot of financial planning is to give people autonomy, to give them control over their life. And it's difficult to do that when you're constantly paying bills for things that you bought 2 or 3 years ago.
Right. And before you started working with clients, helping them save for retirement, you also got heavily involved in investing in real estate in your early 20s.
Oh, sure.
Tell us that story.
Oh, God, I don't want to tell that one. Great, sure. So I took a break from school, from college, and ended up starting investing in real estate in 2003. And it was a time when real estate was going crazy. We had just had the dot-com bubble. The stock market had crashed over 40% over the previous 3 years, and real estate went up. And so I got into that. I read a book that talked about leveraging yourself as much as humanly possible to buy as much real estate as you can. And I did that. And by the time I was 24, I owned about $1.5 million in real estate. But I also owned over $1 million in mortgages. And everything was going great until it wasn't.
Right.
And then the market crashed. I spent a year trying to unload everything I had. And then I moved from my brand new custom house in Arizona to my parents' basement in Connecticut, and went from doing whatever I wanted to working full-time, going to school full-time, figuring it out, and getting back on track.
And so how did that experience change your own perspective and shift your focus in helping people navigate retirement planning?
Well, I mean, listen, it was 24, 25 when that crashed, when that happened for me. I mean, and, you know, that was okay. And luckily I had a parent's basement to go back to. But who wants to do that at 70 years old, right? People have all of their money in the stock market. And if that goes down like it did during the Great Recession, if that goes down like it did during the dot-com bubble, you're going to find a lot of people that are now going to have to be reliant on their kids if they have them, or find a way to try to go back to work. And I don't know anybody that wants to be in that situation.
So was that experience what inspired you to want to be in this sort of space?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, when you deal with it on a personal level, when you have to figure out how to get out of debt, when you have to figure out how to argue with credit card companies. I mean, listen, when I met my wife, I was 27, still going to school, living in my parents' basement, and owing the IRS $30,000. real winner. And when I got my first actual tax refund from the IRS, like I framed it. I mean, I posited it, but I also framed it.
Right.
I mean, let's be clear. So it was a scenario where you really had to fight and claw to get back. And this whole idea of trying to get rich quick, right? Of trying to win the lottery, of trying to do these things where you just kind of get into, it's not how you build wealth. The people that build wealth, the people that I work with that have over $1 million, that have over 2, 3, 5, these aren't people that made crazy money. These are people that saved consistently over time, built, struggled, didn't go on the fancy vacation, didn't buy the crazy TV. You know, they sacrificed so that they could take care of themselves and always have control later.
Well, and thanks for sharing that story, because I'm sure that is helpful, right, to hear it from someone else and realize that perhaps these decisions need a bit more thought behind it. And what are you hearing from your clients right now regarding retirement and having to make tough decisions in these markets?
It's tough right now because there is a lot of uncertainty. I mean, it's funny because the market hit all-time highs and continues to hit all-time highs. And then, you know, you have 60 Minutes the other day that talks about how we may be on the precipice of a 1929. And so what's important for us is to make sure that even if the stock market crashes, that you're still okay. We need to plan in such a way that the stock market crashing does not affect the way that you live in retirement. And so there's different buckets that we use to put people's money in to make sure that when that happens, right, because stock market crashes happen every 7, 8, 9 years anyway. How big and how long they last, we'll see. But when that happens, we have a place to pull from that doesn't change the way that we live. We can still go on vacation. We can still enjoy our time. So that's really the focus of our firm, is figuring out. And then from there, we talk about when we take Social Security, how do we minimize taxes, all the things that are so important for people.
Well, and as you say, it's pretty fluid. A lot of things happen. I mean, every 5 minutes, I feel like something's changed. We're getting different information every time I refresh the news page. But with all of the uncertainties, with all of the things that are going on, are you finding that people are planning to work longer than they originally planned, or delaying retirement out of fear, or perhaps with the current political climate impacting everything from tariffs to housing to all of the things that you just mentioned? You know, how do you have those conversations with your client? Are these fears that you're hearing?
So the best thing that I can do for anybody, and what I have to do for myself, is I build a model, right? We build models and we show them. Let's look at a what-if scenario. You know, just like when we talk about Social Security. You know, if we talk about 24% of Social Security going away after 2033 or 2034 or whatever the new estimate is today, let's build that into your model and let's see if you can still retire. Let's look at all of these what-if scenarios and make sure that you can impact them. But I think it's important for people to be able to see if I spend X. But sometimes we'll build these models, and I've had people say, "Oh, I've got $800,000 now. If I keep on living the way that I'm living, I'll have $20 million when I'm 95, and who cares? I can't do anything with that money then. I better spend that money now." So it's interesting the way people go, but the goal for us is simply to give you control.
And how do you approach retirement through the lens of financial resiliency?
So when it comes to working longer or not, I think it's important, again, to show the model. I mean, it's always going to be better if people are working longer. At the same time, there are a lot of scenarios when people don't like their jobs. For people that do like their jobs, continue working, that's wonderful, great. But for people that are getting very frustrated, you can show them that they can retire earlier. It's always going to be better to work longer. A lot of people have this idea of a side gig, idea of working longer, but statistically speaking, there are a lot of reasons that people are forced to retire early. If you work in a big corporation and a new manager comes in and they're tasked with cutting costs, they're going to take the person that's 61 over the person that's 24 because they cost more. And we've seen that time and time again in our industry. There are scenarios where people get sick, or they have to take care of parents, or they have to take care of kids. There are a lot of statistical reasons why people can't work as long as they'd like to.
Sure.
That's why saving is so important, and the work that the teachers do here is so incredible.
Right, and speaking of teachers, Christian, when you're talking with teenagers, retirement feels so far off, and we're talking about retirement right now, but it really isn't per se. And so how do you approach this topic with students when there are so many other things top of mind, especially with what Ben just shared? There's so many things that could happen in between now and then. What are those conversations like?
Yeah, I will steal an idea from this amazing teacher. He's out in Southern California, but the idea, I think, works really well, whether you're surfing on, Manhattan Beach or something, or hanging out in Burlington, Connecticut, riding a motorcycle. Anyway, what he does is he starts his investing unit in his class by using one of those face tune apps, and he has the students tune their faces until they're like 75, 80 years old. So they do a selfie and then they tune their faces to 75, 80 years old. And they have a laugh about the wrinkles, et cetera, and the white hair. But then from there, they talk about, okay, this is what you might look like, very theoretically, hypothetically, out that far away. What do you want your life to look like at that time? And then they backwards plan from there. And to Ben's point, it's about what are the controllables now as a teenager to set yourself up for whatever your life is ideally going to look like at that time. So they talk about, the cost of different lifestyles, and, they talk about the pros and cons of like the flashy, kind of lifestyle versus the more, I guess, Spartan lifestyle at that age, and go from there, building budgets, building researching savings accounts, and then ultimately researching investing. The other really powerful example that I've seen create aha moments I primarily work with educators, but the other example that I've seen create aha moments or aha moments is I call it the holy moly chart. If you show students or teachers or anyone this chart, it creates this holy moly aha moment. If you show someone who starts investing at age 20 versus someone who starts investing at age 30 even, they invest the same amount each month or each year or whatever, no matter how you cut it, the person who starts investing earlier ends up with a massively large sum of money compared to the person who starts investing later. And the main variable is not how the market, fared over that time period. It's time in the market. Teenagers have an amazing advantage over the likes of me, given that they can make decisions about this now, and take advantage of a long, long time horizon. And so I've seen teachers kind of flip this idea on its head. Okay, yes, retirement is pretty far away if you're a teenager. However, retirement is really far away if you're a teenager, meaning you can take advantage of all of that time via compounding returns in the market.
Well, I did not expect the visual learning aspect of it, but it makes so much sense with all the aging apps that we have available out here. I can see that being an incentive, absolutely. And we're going to be coming back to this conversation after another quick break. We've been talking about personal finance with Ben Fuchs, Barbara Angelicola-Manzolli, and Christian Sherrill, and they'll all be staying with us. And speaking of money, it's our annual fall fund drive. Consider supporting Where We Live and all of your favorite programming here with a donation. We appreciate the support and think of it as an investment in a better informed society. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Today we've been talking about personal finances, and Christian, I want to jump straight back to questions with you because I think whenever we enter into challenging financial times, we see a lot of influencers start to give financial advice, and we see a surge of investing influencers, and it seems like a very advanced topic for teenagers, but with information exposure, I think teenagers know a lot more than we did, but it sounds like this is also intentionally part of the curriculum. Is that true?
It is. Yeah. We go into in the NGPF curriculum, we go into some of the behavioral science tricks that social media in general and influencers in particular use to convey authority over a subject. And the one that kind of scares me the most is those who convey authority that they don't actually have about investing. There are all kinds of, new types of investments or assets that you can buy these days, and including cryptocurrency, and oftentimes influencers will sell, trading courses, match my trades, and you can, double your money in 1 week, trading cryptocurrency or trading foreign exchange or whatever. And how they convey their authority to talk about these things, there are some patterns, and there are some red flags that you can look out for. So the curriculum, and when I work with teachers on this, the curriculum emphasizes, what to look out for when you are, seeing influencers on social media. And teenagers in particular are exposed to and bombarded by tons of influencers on social media, especially on TikTok. So what to look out for, when you're hearing people talk about investing and doubling their money or whatever. It's really important. And frankly, young people have that experience, so they come armed with, materials for the discussion. They've had experience with seeing these folks in their feeds.
Well, and not really in the same space, but kind of similar context, Ben, because you have a podcast, so you're on the interwebs, let's say. Or is this something you think about when you create content?
Well, our goal isn't to say get rich quick. Or,
right.
I remember growing up, you had the TV commercials with the guy selling the book in front of the massive yacht. And
I'm not gonna lie, that's kind of what I was picturing.
Right, that was my thought too. I just want to jump back to something that Kristen was saying earlier, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Because you think about the window that people have to invest, and there are different windows. And one of the things that's interesting is I think about, I have 3 kids now, right? 11, 8, and 4, which means that I've been paying for daycare for over 11 years now. And man, if I had been putting that money into my retirement plan instead of my daycare, I might already be retired. But that window, when you start working and making real money, to when you have kids, is almost like a enhanced window of when you can really retire and save for the future. And if you start doing it then, all of a sudden, like, you've set yourself up for a whole future. That might take care of almost, let's say, the majority of your actual retirement planning. Sorry, let me get back to the question you asked, which was...
we were talking about influencing or influencer culture, and because you have a podcast, do you think about, of course, the information that you're conveying out there? What goes through your mind when you're planning?
So a lot of the podcasts that we do is from real stories from clients. We always kind of pick out, meet with a lot of different people. We do free consultations. So we get a lot of different unique problems that come on through our advisors. And we talk about those every week when we go through the different planning that we have. And so when we talk about podcasts, the goal is just to bring those topics to life and to talk about some of the things that people are really dealing with in real life.
And Barbara, we've got about a minute here. Talking about money can be really difficult, but important conversation to have. So any tips on how parents can navigate conversations about sports betting or credit cards or the pay now, pay later programs, and the importance of saving with their kids?
I think we have to break that barrier. I send my students home all the time going, hey, this is a great conversation starter for dinner, or this is a great thing to ask your parents about. And I run into parents in our community because I live in one of the 2 towns, and they always tell me I make for interesting dinner conversation. They want to know.
Right.
And I need to go back to something Ben said, that he was 27 when he met his wife and owed money. I always tell my students that I take all of the hearts and Cupid out of falling in love, and you better know somebody's debt. You better know their credit score, and you better know their thoughts on spending money before you make a commitment to live with them and marry them and possibly have children with them. And we joke about that, but it leads to conversation, right? So anything that I can send home, anytime I can prompt my students to say, go home and ask your parents what this was like when they were learning about money, or how do they handle this now? And back to that assignment that I do about that 1 month of spending, they're amazed at what their insurance costs. I had a young lady that rides horses, and she didn't know the value of renting her horse every month or what the barn fees were. And she said she had a whole new appreciation for what her parents were doing for her because something had to be given up. We talk about that a lot, opportunity cost. What are you willing to give up so that you can do this? Or what is the thought process in this? So I've only been in education 23 years. I was an HR professional. Christian I alluded and Christian backed it up. My husband and I have a pretty big age difference. There's 14 years. David's been retired for 7. And at 63, I'll be 64 in January, I'm going, what do I do? How long do I keep teaching? What else can I do? So it's a conversation we have in class all the time.
Well, I want to thank our guests for having this conversation with us today. You've been listening to Ben Fuchs, Barbara Angelicola-Manzolli, and Christian Sherrill. Thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I'm Catherine Shen. Today's show is produced by Tess Terrible. Our technical producer is Dylan Reyes. Download Where We Live anytime on your favorite podcast app. Thank you all so much for listening. And a quick reminder for our listeners that it is our annual fund drive. Maybe you've been super smart with your money and you've got a little extra to share. Consider supporting Where We Live and all of your favorite programming here with a donation. An investment in public media is guaranteed to make a difference in our state.